Okay, everybody, welcome back to Potato Industry Conference 2020. Hope you all had a good break and you got through some of those emails and other bits and bobs that you need to do. Right. So before the break, we had a really good look at some of the domestic, that whole piece around supply and demand, and whether or not we are balanced in the light of coronavirus. We're now in this next session. We're starting, as I said right at the beginning, for those of you who were with us then. We're now going to start to stretch things, and we're going to go out through Europe and then look at the rest of the world and put some ideas together. So our first speaker, I'm going to invite Sandy McGowan from Cygnet PEP to join us. Now Sandy's this is a bit of déjà vu for one or two of you. Sandy's done a great presentation for us through the webinar series, which will be available to you. But we thought for this bigger audience, just as relevant here, and things are moving or not, as the case may be, in terms of some of that decision making around Brexit. So what we were really keen to hear is how this is impacting on individual businesses. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Sandy, and he'll talk you through things from a Cygnet PEP perspective. So over to you, Sandy.
Okay, yeah, good morning, everyone. I hope this is working. Certainly, it's a new format, a new way of working for myself, but for all of us presenting in this manner. Now, I'll start off by saying, for those that joined with the Patrick Hughes initiated Brexit webinars of a couple of weeks ago, you can probably afford a nap just now, because this is exactly the same presentation as I did 2 weeks ago. I'm going to try and be a little bit more positive.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we appear to have lost Sandy momentarily. Sandy, you are back.
I'm back. Am I here?
You are indeed.
Right, fantastic. Okay, sorry about that, folks. As I said, technology playing its part there. Well, I think that's probably a Sandy fail rather than a technology fail. Anyway, this is my attempt, take two of the presentation from a couple of weeks ago. So if you can bear with me, I believe that we should now be able to see the presentation on screen. So I was asked by Patrick to contribute towards a Brexit readiness webinar session that he did a couple of weeks ago, and give a point of view from the trade, in particular as a UK seed exporter. Now, as you can see, or as you may have seen already, this is very much looking at the implications of a no-deal Brexit that we're currently staring down the barrel of. First of all, a bit of background about myself and about Cygnet PEP. Cygnet PEP are a leading exporter of Scottish seed potatoes. We're a joint venture business, a very imaginative name. The joint venture is between Cygnet Potato Breeders, Cygnet PB, and Pan-European Potatoes, hence the very imaginative and creative name of Cygnet PEP. However, we started trading 8 years ago. We specialise in both proprietary and free varieties, and we do operate in a number of countries, as you can see from the images on the right-hand side of the screen there. We have access to all of these markets via direct supply of Scottish seed or through licensed production agreements. So for instance, we have Kerry coming up later on in Australia, where we have a lot of our varieties already registered and represented within the marketplace. So perhaps Kerry is even growing some of ours already. Within the context of the UK, though, we have 43 Scottish-based suppliers, which are effectively growers, and we supply 45 export markets directly from Scotland, either via container ship or truck. Cygnet PEP doesn't operate in the UK and Ireland market. Our specialisation is to go to the export markets, and the domestic markets handled by our sisters in the potato breeding side, Cygnet PB. Within this, obviously, our main markets, like so many in Scotland, are to North Africa and the Middle East, and we even extend much further afield into Southeast Asia, with a number of our varieties. But in all this as well, the European Union remains a very important market for our growers and for our varieties. We're very active in the breeding side with the processing sector, in particular the crisp and French fry varieties. We have a strong focus in our breeding programme on these sectors, but of course we are also involved in the fresh sector, and we're also in multiplication of seed across Europe now, where Scottish elite is viewed as a high-grade option for a number of these countries. So they're buying seed from us to multiply for one, possibly even twice grown seed to go into their wider supply chain. So within all that, there's of course a 4-year multiplication programme that starts at mini tubers from one of our wholly owned subsidiary businesses, that goes through the pre-basic or even the S-grade multiplication system in Scotland, right down into the lower grades before we distribute it to our customers. And within the European Union, 15% of what we do lands in these member states. So as you can imagine, Brexit is a fairly significant issue that we're facing, and with 5-6 weeks to go, planning has been going on for a number of months and years since the referendum, but really we are now into the final throes of how we handle this problem going forward. So the current position of Brexit, it's not lost on me that the image is very much our on-seal thing. It's doing exactly as it says in the tin. In my opinion, and that of many others that I speak to in the trade, the UK seed industry, the UK potato industry, is currently staring off the edge of a cliff. At the end of our transition period, on the 31st of December 2020, at 11 PM UK time, which is of course midnight European time, we end our transition, we become a third country, and that means that we have no access to the European market. No third country without third country equivalents can supply potatoes, seed or ware, into the European Union. Now, third country equivalence was applied for by DEFRA a long time ago, just after the Brexit referendum and during the various transition periods that we've faced with the extensions. Now, that application was never recognised until we actually Brexited in January 2020. Again, once we went through the Brexit process at this point, the application was again posted to the European Commission, and it was recognised and accepted as an application at that point. But unfortunately, despite the fact that we as a business, as Cygnet PEP, through our own channels of communication, through partners that we work with in the European Union, through trade bodies, through a number of different channels, we have tried to press the flesh of the European Commission, and in particular the Standing Committee on Plant Health, so as we can have some form of a timeline as to when our application for third country equivalence is going to be reviewed and hopefully accepted. We're still hit with the fact that until a deal is agreed or the transition period ends, our application will not be reviewed. It's a bit of a strange position to be in, given that we were initially told that we couldn't apply until we Brexited, but now we've applied after the Brexit process completed in January. They now won't actually sit and discuss and debate the application. It does have the feeling that we're a bit of a political pawn being played here, but it's where we stand at this moment in time. The only one thing that has happened that has changed the position of the Brexit third country equivalence discussion would be that the UK DEFRA have granted a short extension for the import of European seed potatoes to the UK. That's a 6-month extension. It's going to run from January the 1st until the end of June 2021, and is to allow for the various varieties, the various specific varieties for supply chains into the fresh market, into the processing market, to come into the UK. Unfortunately, despite the fact that we are more or less in balance with our exports to the UK and our imports from the EU to the UK, it is very much down to genetics and down to the fact that it's not quite as simple as turning 25,000-30,000 tonnes of imports into 25,000-30,000 tonnes of Scottish Maris Piper and Desiri. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work quite as simply as that. So that that was seen as a bit of an olive branch that was being extended to the European Union, but yes, so far it hasn't been recognised as such. So short term, where are we as a business, as Cygnet PEP? Well, as I've mentioned, we have to seriously consider having all of our seed deliveries into our European customers before the transition period ends. So as you see from my first bullet point there, the term that's being used is free in circulation before the 31st of the 12th, 2020 at midnight in Central European time. Effectively, what that means is that the seed has to be into a European Union border. We have to have some form of agreement with a customer in the European Union, although at this point that has changed slightly, and we don't actually have to have the final user, the final customer to take delivery of the seed. So the opportunity does exist to land the seed into warehouse, into cold store, and distribute through the supply chains as required. Of course, that creates a great deal of number of risks for us. Just within the last few days, but certainly in the last couple of weeks since the last presentation, I've had a number of conversations with my European-based customers. Storage is obviously bursting within Europe at the moment, given the current supply issues that there are and the bumper harvest that some of the countries have achieved. COVID-19 is, of course, having an impact on that, with a downturn in the processing markets in particular. So finding availability of suitable storage is a slight issue. A number of our customers aren't necessarily used to having to store seeds. They are used to taking delivery of their input seeds on a just-in-time basis. So we have to be very mindful of the quality of storage and their knowledge in how to store seed potatoes, and of course the fact that we'll be shipping these seed potatoes in jumbo polypropylene bags and hessian bags, for that matter, which are not designed to be used as a storage vessel for seed potatoes. So all of these risks have to be taken into consideration and discussed with the customer who potentially, and in most cases, haven't necessarily considered these risks. And of course, there is a cost to all this as well. Cold storage isn't available for free, despite the fact that we may hope that we can land it there. It has to stay in store, whether it's in the UK or Europe. But yeah, unfortunately, there is a charge to go with this that somebody has to pay for. Ultimately, that's going to come back to the supplier and into the exporter, in my mind. Then on top of that, we have a logistics issue. Cygnet PEP alone is going to need 200 trucks of suitable quality, suitable standard to ship seed potatoes into the European Union. And when you take into account the amount of other businesses that will be trying to beat that deadline, to beat any potential tariffs that will come in, we're already seeing a major logjam from the UK-based container ports and export ports. Scotland is particularly poorly served by container export options. We effectively have two, one on the west coast and one on the east coast, which really drills down to the fact that we have one for seed potato exports at most points in the year. And I think all the exporters that are currently listening in would agree that this year has been particularly difficult in getting containers and trucks in and out of the port, as the volume of traffic required for all exports, not just of potatoes, is gone through the roof. That I understand from news reports and articles on TV shows is sort of reciprocated across most of the ports, and in particular Felixstowe featured on a recent Sunday afternoon report, which made the popular press. So we can see this happening right across the UK, not just in terms of what we are looking at. Of course, then we have to have a consideration as to how we move forward with our own proprietary varieties, varieties that we exclusively currently produce in the UK. So we have to make the decision now: do we move very limited generation PB2, PB3 seed from Scotland into European countries such as France and Holland? That again is with a major risk, given we don't have our own people on the ground there. We'd be relying upon third parties to look after the seed in store before planting comes along in April and May 2021. And of course, that's also then reducing the total capacity of the Scottish seed industry if we are moving production out of Scotland to continue to have access to that European market in the future. Longer term, yeah, that's meant to be me sailing my Union Jack umbrella across the European Union Sea. I'm not so sure that the umbrella would stand up quite as well as if it had my considerable weight on it. But the point being is that we are kind of gazing out and trying to make decisions today based on a very unknown scenario. At the moment, as we've touched upon a number of times, third country equivalence is really the key to this whole piece. If we are able to achieve third country equivalence in the next 6 weeks, then a lot of what I've just said is out the window and we can go back to business as usual. But as we've been told, third country equivalence doesn't get discussed until such point as the deal is announced. So we very much have our own opinions on that in Cygnet PEP, but it may not be shared by others on this webinar today. However, if it isn't agreed before the transition periods ends, will it be agreed within time before planting 21 takes place? If not by planting 21, will it be done before harvest 21 takes place? Or dare I say it, before we even get to this point next year when we have to consider how we're going to ship any seed we've produced for the European Union markets into the countries? There's obviously a great deal of early planting goes on in some of the southern Mediterranean countries, in particular Spain, and they need to take delivery of seed in December 2021. So will we have access to the market by then? I think there's a great deal, a number of barriers that exist even with third country equivalents, such as WTO tariffs, phytosanitary requirements, plant passports, all of these things. But I have to be honest and say that as Cygnet PEP, as an exporting business, none of that is insurmountable. It's all issues at our end. It's additional costs, it's additional paperwork that we have to do, but we already go through all of that process for our major customers in North Africa and the Middle East. Perhaps the bigger issue is going to be for those that are receiving the seed that aren't used to this and will not have to trade in this manner with some of our competitors in the European Union, in particular the major seed producers in Holland, Belgium, France and Denmark. Again, we're giving ourselves another set of hurdles to jump through to make ourselves competitive. We have, of course, the risk of planting EU-specific varieties. That has a flip side as well, where we export a vast tonnage to third countries such as Egypt, Morocco, other Middle Eastern and North African countries as well, where the phytosanitary conditions are extremely tight, extremely difficult to hit. We lose the access to the European market for some of these varieties that maybe don't quite make the grade for our Egyptian friends or our Moroccan friends, but is still perfectly acceptable within the context of the EU phytosanitary rules. That disappears, and it then presents a question to a number of the suppliers, a number of the growers, as to whether economically they can take the risk to grow these varieties. It was posed as a question a number of times. Surely the Brexit presents a number of new opportunities for the seed industry in the UK. We, of course, have deals signed with a number of countries already, most recently Canada, but of course Japan, all these other countries, etc., that are listed on the UK government website. Having studied them, having looked at them, is there opportunity for the Scottish seed industry, for the UK seed industry? I can't say no, because of course there's always an opportunity as things change, but I have to be honest and say that most of these countries seem to have a fairly mature and fairly well-developed seed industry of their own already in place. So I'd be surprised if there was suddenly a massive demand for UK and in particular Scottish seed to these countries. We also have to bear in mind that I've mentioned a number of times that the majority of Scottish exports go to the North African, Middle Eastern countries, and we will have to trade under tariff unless deals are agreed. The positive is that there are discussions in place with Egypt and Morocco as two of the larger partners that we have. And given that we ship most of the seed pre-Christmas, pre the transition period ending, you do have to hope that tariffs aren't going to become a major issue going forward. But yeah, of course, the opportunities works both ways. You have to expect that we're going to have some of our competitor countries, in particular, the already seed-producing countries, looking at Brexit as a major opportunity for them to pick up the share that we've had into some of these major partners that we have. So let's not kid ourselves. This is going to become a very competitive marketplace over the next few weeks and months, depending on how the trade negotiations go. Final point I want to just raise is that I am currently the British Potato Trade Association president. We have a number of things on our agenda at this moment in time, but as you can imagine, being engaged daily in seed exports, my pet project is very much the Brexit engagement of the BPTA. And it's as recently as just a couple of hours ago, it was posed to me by a member as to what is the BPTA actually been doing over the recent months and in fact years since the Brexit referendum took place. Well, what I can tell you very briefly, we're in direct communications with DEFRA, in particular Andy Mitchell and his team, to the point that we've had direct lines of communication with cabinet ministers such as George Eustace within the UK government and Mary Goujon and Fergus Ewing in the Scottish government, and as well as the sort of the Andy Mitchell equivalents of John Spears, etc., in the Scottish government as well. We're on a cross-sector trade association collaboration. We work together with the Potato Processors Association, the Fresh Potato Suppliers Association, as well as NFU, NFUS, to work towards the import extension for the UK, which, as I mentioned, was an olive branch extended, and in the cold light of day was really the correct thing to do for the British potato trade going forward. BPTA also still maintain their membership within Europotat and will do regardless of the outcome of any Brexit trade negotiations. The Europotat, for those that don't know, is a Brussels-based trade association, and they have an office based there, and they have direct lines of communication with the European Commission, and have recently actually appointed a new member of staff that has taken on the Brexit impacts as part of his remit, and is in sort of weekly communication with Gerard Croft, our association secretary. We are trying to keep members as well informed on this as we can, but as I say, as recently as this morning, we still have questions coming in about Brexit, and given that we're 5 weeks away and the impact it's going to have, it is startlingly obvious that the communication hasn't failed, but it maybe hasn't reached as widely as it should have done through all trade bodies. And perhaps that's been an ignorance by those not particularly willing to accept the outcome of this, but unfortunately this is where we're heading. And we are in wider discussions with EU trade associations. We have been trying to use our contacts within other member states, in particular our friends in Ireland, to try and press this home that things are not going to be simple going forward unless we can achieve third country equivalence. Anyway, I wanted to try and put a more positive spin onto the end of this presentation than just saying that we're facing problem after problem after problem. What we do have in the UK, and in particular Scotland, is a fantastic seed export industry. We're really one of the more integrated industries, between SASA at the very top as our seed certification body, all the way down through the independent advisory bodies such as JHI and SRUC, seed export companies such as Cygnet PEP, and all my competitors out there, right the way through to our growers and the on-ground Scottish Government inspectors. We have this fabulous integrated story that we can tell and that we can offer to our customers. I think one of the things that we need to be sure of that we can do as an industry is to really press home with our current customers and the people that we're working with, is to the fact that nothing is going to change within our shores over the Brexit exit period, and our seed potatoes are still going to be of the highest quality and the best standard that they can achieve in the world. Not just for their own supply chain, but what they can receive from any supplier in the world. So that's the positive part at the end, and I think it's really important that we press that home and we maintain what we're doing. Anyway, I'll sum up at this moment in time and come to an end and really say that it's been great that I've had the opportunity to present again. I hope I haven't rabbited on too much, but certainly I know there's a question and answer session coming up, and I'm going to hand back to Rob and see where we go from here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Sandy. You heard it here first. Nothing is unsurmountable or insurmountable. So thank you for that. Thank you for the positivity, Sandy. We are a resilient sector in the round. We're used to taking risks, and we keep a very close eye on the costs and that competitive piece. So thank you for that. Right, we're going to go a bit further afield now, and we're going to go over to Wickham Farms. And just to avoid any doubt here, it's nowhere near Wickham Fen, and it is nowhere near High Wycombe. So I'm really, really pleased that by going to this digital format, we can get some fantastic speakers in from overseas. I'd now like to introduce Karri-Anne Lamb, who is the Managing Director of Wickham Farms, and that is some distance from it. So, Kerry, I'm going to leave you to introduce precisely where you are at this stage. So thank you very much.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for that introduction. I am Karri Lamb from Wickham Farms in Killarney in Australia, Queensland, Australia. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to participate in this forum. I appreciate the invitation by AHDB, Claire and Rachel. To introduce myself, I thought I would show you this video, and it was made very recently, and it was made by Hort Innovation, and they come up to one of our farms in Killarney at Acacia Plateau and did a quick little Meet the Grower video. So I will see if I can get it showing now. Oops. This one. This one. Oops. Share entire screen.
Okay, how are we getting on, Kerry? I think we all have these technology challenges from time to time.
Hang on. So it's not showing.
Okay.
What's happening? Am I not sharing properly? What am I? Where do I need to click? I can share it after. Okay, I'll try and share it after.
I think what we'll do is we'll get a link around to everybody so that we can have a really good look at that, and yeah, and we'll just go to the head and shoulders and see what we can do in the next few minutes. How does that sound?
I don't know. I did practice that, but I've got it wrong. Maybe Rachel, you can give me a quick heads up on how to do it. So okay, so current challenges. So in Australia, we grow about 1.3 million tonnes a year, and out of that production, about 65% go to processing, which is French fries and crisps. And out of that 65% is processing, 32% is fresh, and 3% is export. So we don't do a lot of export in Australia, only to quite small countries and a lot to Asia, really. So out of that 32%, which is to the fresh market, 84% is retail and about 16% is food service. So for our business, we are about 50 50. So 50% of the potatoes we grow go to retail stores as a brush potato, and about 50% we have a processing factory where we value add and peel potatoes and vacuum pack them, and that's sold fresh, and they go to food service. So we sell to food service, food manufacturers, pubs, clubs, nursing homes, and food service businesses like that. There's really no fresh imports that come into Australia because of our quarantine regulations, but we do at times suffer from cheap frozen imports that come from Europe, and sometimes we have problems with them being dumped in Australia, and they can be sold cheaper, imported and sold cheaper than what we can actually produce and manufacture and sell them in Australia. So that can be a problem at times, and it is really to do with the cost of production and the volume that we have in our market. In Australia, the consumers really like generally they like quite a large brush potato, and during my Nuffield study I noticed that in Ireland they really liked quite large potatoes. In the UK they liked their large brush potatoes as well. So, but in Australia we do have a lot of smaller wash varieties and quite small pack sizes. When travelling to Europe, so during my Nuffield I travelled to Europe, UK, Germany, Austria, Ireland and New Zealand. It was obvious that in those countries, in the countries with quite short growing periods and long winters, long cold winters, that storage was really, really important. And there's a lot of money put into storage to maintain a year-round supply. So, the difference here in Australia is we have new season almost all year round because we have several growing seasons in our country, and our business model for our business is to have different growing seasons across Queensland. So we will grow in the northern part of Queensland up near Cairns, our farm is in Atherton, and then we have other growing seasons lower, closer to the New South Wales-Queensland border. So they're quite a long distance apart. Where are we? So yeah, I did notice in the UK they had some quite strong marketing campaigns for potatoes, and I believe that's very, very positive. It's one of our current challenges in Australia that we don't have a marketing levy, and we so yeah, we don't have a marketing levy, so it's up to growers individually to tell their own story. And I feel that it does let us down a little bit because the industry assumes that the product's going to sell itself, and that's fairly naive considering that there's so much competition out there for the consumer's dollar. COVID in Australia has impacted the industry in a few different ways, and I think one of the earlier speakers spoke about that in UK. But our consumption for fresh potatoes went up dramatically, basically because people were looking for one shot once a fortnight. They were looking for a very long shelf life product, so they were going for the brush potatoes even over the wash potatoes. They were looking at whole produce. They were looking at far less processed products, and that way they could keep their products at home. The shelf life was much longer, and they could prepare their own meals. So that was sort of, that part of our business increased. And then the other part of our business with our food service, the home deliveries increased. So we sell to a company that distributes prepared meals across Australia, and that their sales increased dramatically because they do home delivery. So that was contactless food delivery. So the peeled potatoes for us increased as well, and that took the place of our other food service customers. So anything, customers we sold to who were home delivery or had drive-through, which was another contactless, supermarkets, selling to supermarkets or selling to nursing homes and hospitals, that all either increased or stayed the same. So we didn't really have any, our sales actually didn't diminish during COVID, they actually increased slightly. So then also there was quite a lot of interest in this. The Australian consumer took quite a lot of interest in the push for Australian grown and provenance, knowing where their food was coming from, knowing where their food was grown, knowing where their food was manufactured. So that was something that as growers we've always tried to push, but during COVID people decided they really wanted to know about that, and they actually looked for that. Information, and growers in Australia who had an online presence or a social media campaign or anything like that, that took off dramatically. So, so there were a few silver linings in the whole COVID experience for people in Australia, and especially for the produce. So where was I? Now I've been recently involved in a campaign with my sponsor, Hort Innovation, who was my sponsor for my Nuffield Scholarship, and it's a project that we're working on, and it's actually we're helping to get dietitians involved with this program for distributing information around the health benefits of potatoes. And Hort Innovation using money from Fresh Fund for this research and development. And the campaign is called Aussie Potatoes, and we'll be able to share that link as well. And it's looking at basically the nutritional benefits of potatoes. So we've done some very interesting things, like different growers have, we have sent in samples to be tested, and we're really excited about the preliminary results for that. And it's looking like these sort of simple things haven't been done for a very long time, and the information we have that we can draw on is quite old. So we're looking at lots of nice new information. And one of the other things that have come out of it is the nutritional benefits for gut health from retained starch, which is cooked and cooled potatoes. So we have been working on some quite interesting things, and you know, those health claims about who's sending the who is sending the messages to the consumer. We have had all that bad press about the bad carbs, and when we were all looking at quite a while ago, there was a trend about low carb diets. So those the health claims are essential, and we really need to be getting the right messages out. Consumers also need to know that they're also quite willing to demonstrate their social responsibility. So the sustainability of potatoes, it's very important to get that information out. And then the provenance, telling the story about potatoes, how we use them, where they come from, and you know, the freshness and the nutritional value, and all of those things are really important as well. So, so having our industries promote those things for us is really, really important, and it's something that really needs to happen in the future if we're going to maintain our industry, maintain a healthy, robust industry, and also the convenience products, but healthy convenience products. So having potato in a convenient way, but still be healthy. So yeah, so that's all I'd really like to talk about. That's all I'd really like to say. Happy for some questions, and hopefully be able to share my video in a second. Let's see if we can try that again.
For everyone's benefit here, we have dropped the link to the video into our chat.
Perfect.
So people will be able to pick that one up. So thank you ever so much, Karri, for that. Yeah, the power of social media. That's something I think in our 12 o'clock session when we hear from Nick Pod, we'll be able to say quite a bit more about in terms of what I'll do at this stage now is go straight over. We're going from one Nuffield scholar to another here, but slightly closer to home. I'm going to invite Claire now to talk through some of her observations, and in particular that is that focus on the connectivity in the seed potato supply chain that Claire's going to concentrate on. So Claire, it's over to you. Claire, we can't hear you at the moment. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the technology is starting to beat us a little bit today. We're just going to see if Claire can log back in. Yes, she can. All right. Back in.
I'm back in. Okay, so this should work now. My Nuffield scholarship was looking at improving connectivity in the seed potato supply chain. For a bit of a background, I'm sure most of you will understand, perhaps thinking where we were 2 years ago, if not 4 years ago, at the seed industry event. And one of the topics we talked a lot about was blackleg, and how do we go forward, and how does it work, and how do we implement. And I think we were facing a situation, if you recall, when the third inspections came in, and lots of different reactions to that approach, and a lot of different responses to how we move forward. So this is kind of where my my project came from, and what I wanted to address and understand better. Unfortunately, I got a Nuffield scholarship to do it and ask these questions. And really, it's looking at understanding the importance of the supply chains, especially through volatility, and then where are the opportunities to improve that connectivity. I couldn't have imagined 2 years ago that we'd be sitting where we are right now, and the need for connectivity and the need to work together has never been more important. And understanding those supply chains is absolutely critical. I couldn't have believed that we'd go through a pandemic while we face Brexit, and what does that mean for the potato industry? And hopefully this study provides a little bit of insight to the background of what we're doing with the industry. I can move on. So I don't need to explain the potato supply chain to you guys, but also let's go back and have a little look at it. It's often considered as being a linear process, the supply chain, but ultimately it needs to connect. And the potato supply chain, especially seed, it takes a long time to get to market. And where do we start with that? And ultimately, we need to link everything back together in a circular system, including science, research, agronomy, markets, technology. It's a complete cycle that keeps on moving. And as Sandy's mentioned earlier, the value of the seed supply chain is making sure that innovation, the skill, the marketing potential, as we keep a really good, strong global reputation, and also looking after our English market as well. So really, it's a complex, long supply chain. And I know people have made steps to make this shorter. We have really great integrated systems, but what can we do better, and what will this system look like in the future? I went back to school a little bit on my scholarship. I wanted to understand what was actually happening. Having worked with Greenville in procurement field teams, I always wanted to, you could always see what worked, but understanding why something worked always kind of perplexed me. So I went back a bit to school to understand what was going on. And I think this project's matrix explains this quite well. If you look at the complexity of the supply chain against the profit impact of the business, it allows you to create this supplier segmentation. So you end up with two tactical boxes. So you've got your leverage and your bottleneck items. And what happens here is your leverage item would be something like fuel, and your bottleneck item, something we might have not considered before, would be toilet rolls. Because you can't just suddenly switch on more supply of this. Non-critical items, that's often described as being your stationery for your office, something that's low cost, low impact, and often could be sourced from different places. But what I really want to concentrate on is the strategic supplier position. And what I think is that this is what all potato producers are. This is a small number of suppliers that will have a very close working relationship with the buyer, based on transparency, joint communication, and sharing of operational information. The supplier has sufficient power in this relationship, and it's very much a two-way relationship that works in a progressive way. And I think this is where the industry works best, and this is where our huge potential is, by making sure that connectivity and the information supply goes back and forward. So where did I go? This was the exciting bit. I wanted to kind of compare developed and emerging markets and understand what was going on. So I travelled to Kenya, Chile, Brazil, and India, and these are developing markets with huge potential. There's a big population growth, and potatoes offer huge opportunities. In these markets, the number of growers is also high, and many of the supply chain frameworks are in their infancy. And this compared to USA, UK, and EU, where these are really well-established markets. And in contrast, the number of growers is falling, and supply chains are very complex and have been established for some time. So what did I learn as I went through? I met some incredible people and some amazing stories, and I'm kind of going to talk you through a few of my favourite stories of the people I met. Potato production is more sustainable than rice or pasta, and we know this, and it's got a great story to tell when it comes to the environment. In emerging markets where the production systems are low on inputs and reliant on manual labour, there's great opportunity for potatoes as a global food, in which we've not realised yet. Here is Matomi, and he changed the way I thought about how potatoes can be produced. He showed me through his system. He had 5 acres in Kenya, and he'd built an irrigation system. He had a crop rotation of 5 crops, and he could sometimes get 3 crops of potatoes out of his 1 acre every year, in which he had in that rotation. He showed me through the whole system. He had 4 cows. He created manure to fertilize the land. He actually captured the methane off the manure before it went in, and he used that to actually create energy for the house. He had fish in the pond. He even bred the fish and sold the fish into the local market. And everything was absolutely in sync with everything else. And it was an incredible story. And I was there and asked him questions, and he showed me everything that was going on. And at the end, I asked him, when does he replicate this, and when does he buy the next door neighbour's land? Because that's what we're all aiming for here. It's when do we get bigger? When do we produce more? And I asked him, and he looked at me like I was an absolute idiot. And I thought, oh gosh, why have I asked such a stupid question? And he said that he didn't need to get bigger. He could still find opportunity to get better and make more from what he's got. And it was an absolute amazing system. And storage was what he needed to look at next, because he didn't have any way of storing his potatoes. He was reliant on his fresh market. But understanding that whole cycle and that whole approach really changed the way I looked at things. And interestingly, the farm that I stayed on when I was there was a big broadacre cereals farm. And when I spoke to him when I came back from this meeting, he also talked about how he could make more from the large acres that he had. And sometimes it's just asking those different questions, and how can we make more from the land that we've got, as opposed to try and grow on more land. So I'll never forget that experience of that moment. And then you look at markets. Access to market is crucial and cannot be underestimated, having a customer nearby. I visited farmers in Chile who farm in quite isolation. The tyranny distance is not favourable to the potato, especially when you've got mountains and oceans between people and your market. The land there was absolutely incredible. I even asked them about compaction, as they had kind of UK style equipment and large self-propelled harvesters and large planters, and I asked them about compaction, and they just laughed at me because they had meters of topsoil, not just inches. But unfortunately, their biggest challenge was that they couldn't access markets. They had a small population of about 5 million, but they couldn't access other markets in South America, and they were at competition like Sandy's just mentioned about processing crop coming in from other countries and things. So you have to be connected to the market. The picture here is of George from Syngenta Foundation in Kenya, and he showed me a great example of how people are accessing markets in Kenya, and this was on the outskirts of Nairobi. And he talked to me about how the population of 4.4 million in Nairobi, and it's increasing by 4% every year. This was, as the taste changed and the markets changed and developed, fresh hand-cooked crisps were becoming really popular. And this was something that potato farmers could really jump on, because it didn't take an awful lot of infrastructure to actually set up a processing system, because it was hand-cooked. So they were just large pans of oil, essentially, and then packing them and putting them into the local markets. Ultimately, we need to find these opportunities, and I think as an industry we've been really versatile over the last 6 months in actually finding these, and we've shown that the potato industry can be resilient and can respond to the changing consumers' demands and wants. And this is quite an exciting place to be in, that we have a product that is so versatile and can change to what people need. So technology, I probably assumed that this was going to be the core of everything that my scholarship would be. But actually, it really, when I started to meet people and understand things, technology needs to come in second, because we need to understand where the markets and the people and the opportunities are before you actually implement the technology. But then saying that, it's so exciting when you get into the technology and there's so much available. And actually, UK is leading the way. We're so fortunate to have the resources on our doorstep, and the world really is watching us in terms of what we can do and how we implement that. The fast-paced progress in tech wider than just ag can offer the potato supply chain some exciting opportunities, but this could be disruptive. And I saw lots of examples of this in terms of how do we, the markets that we could look at in terms of Kenya and India. True seed is a big opportunity, but how do we want to play that? Where do we want it to go, and who will be responsible for it? Whose hands will this be in, these changes? Interestingly, yesterday we were at the Pre-Basic Growers Association AGM, and next year will be its 50th year. Well, they radicalised the future of seed potatoes and really led the world. So where do we want to go in 50 years' time? Will we be working with true seed? Will we have the technology that's being developed in the UK in terms of genetically modified products? What do we want this to look at, and how do we want to shape it? And where will farmers be within this connectivity? And also, when I was in India, I met with some developers who were putting together support systems for farmers, and actually they were starting to pilot them in Canada, and that was just incredible as well. So it's not just about the crop technology, it's the digital technology that's in behind that as well, and that will give us such powerful platforms to be able to share information. The one that I was particularly interested in, it was actually you could take real-time information from the factories, and it would then send a notification to the harvester driver to say that there'd be damage or bruising found in the factory. Being able to respond so quickly and share information through that supply chain has to be the future. And I think it's really exciting, but we have to have that transparency between both parties to make it work. But in India, there is so much technology available, and it's quite an exciting place to be working in. I think the other thing that I kind of looked at is that the UK models are multi-level and quite complex. So we need to deploy the innovation that encourages simple whole system approaches, rather than just looking at pest and disease or systems in isolation. We have to consider how that works across the whole business and the businesses that you're working with. And then, I've missed a slide out here, sorry. So community. I got a really great opportunity to spend some time in India with Sangha Seeds in the Punjab, and the value of certified seeds cannot be lost. And here I met with a group of farmers there who were, well, there are some shady things going on with seeds and people piracy, and trying to make sure that people understand where the seed comes from and who values it and what's being sold where. And that having a certified system is so crucial to make these things work, because if people don't understand the value of what it is they're buying, it's really difficult to market. And seed from the Punjab would travel all across India because of the value of it and the great kind of quality that you get from that. And while I was in the Punjab, I visited an Innovate UK project where they built a 3,000-ton store with the most modern, impressive facilities, and it was just unbelievable. And this was about Indian government working with UK government, looking at how do they make sure that they can store food and produce in the Punjab. And I think that's something that we need to, how can we continue to work with these programs, and what can the UK do to be part of this story? And this was creating a centre of excellence for storage, and also allowing a research facility to see how farmers in India can actually work with this, and what could be the future of this kind of food basket of the world. And then collaboration. This was a pre-basic grower again in Kenya, James Narodi. So he was a first generation farmer, and he showed me how he was teaching his customers what the value of seed potatoes and certified seed potatoes are, and then teaching them. And then here there was researchers who'd come to learn from him and what he needed to support his business and to support the future of the potato system. The collaboration in the field was so important. However, when he spoke to me, one of the biggest things that were holding him back was being able to have access to money. The challenges around the world are the same everywhere. Being able to access money is fundamental. So he's working with the government to see if he can get greater support and future-proof his business. So opportunities for UK agriculture, and specifically seed potatoes. Connectivity is a mindset. It can't be seen as a process. The mindset of anyone working in the agriculture sector cannot be fixed. I met with people all along my Nuffield travels who demonstrate that intelligence and talent can be developed and strengthened through growth and wherever you are in the world. People are building these connections to the environment, to knowledge, and to people in order to establish strategic partnerships to strengthen their business. And I will go back to these strategic partnerships to position our industry as being a strategic product. We need to make sure that we have transparency, joint communication, and sharing of operational information. But with doing this, it creates so much opportunity and potential. Like I've said, the potato has not met its full potential around the globe, and Scotland seed and UK production can really lead this and be part of it. It's just finding those great opportunities, and Sandy's outlined this already. So I just look forward to working with you all and seeing where we take it. So thank you very much, and I would like to thank the industry for all the support that they've given me, and look forward to working with you again. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Claire. Stuart Wales always got a grin on his face, don't know. Right. Okay, brilliant. Okay, we've had 3 fantastic presentations, 3 very different perspectives on the Brexit challenge, the global opportunity, and the experiences over in Australia. We're now in a Q&A session, which I think will run for about 10 minutes, just to allow a biological break before we resume things. So I'm gonna read through some of the backstage chat and see if I can put any threads together here. And the first one, I think, is actually quite a good one where everyone can have a go at this. So John Sarrett asked us, his question is, he believes that fresh potatoes are considered part of the 5 a day in Australia and New Zealand. Why not in the UK? Okay, so I can answer the first bit, but then I'm going to ask each of you for a bit of a response. So, John, I visited a Minister for Health along with David Walker about 4 or 5 years ago and asked this very question. And we were told outright, yes, we can have 5 a day, providing we pay for the necessary intervention studies and we run them for 20 years so that we understand what the total health impacts are. So it's there if we want to go for it, but we looked at the sums involved. It was hideously expensive. I'd be interested, Karri-Anne, first of all, then, because presumably there's a bit of politics and conversation with government and the health departments before you get to 5 a day in the Southern Hemisphere. Who is it who does that, and how does that work in Australia?
So it is industry driven. So, and industries pay levies, obviously, and levies for different things, either for marketing or for research and development and things like that. So you'll find that so sweet potatoes in Australia, the industry has just they have just introduced a marketing levy. You know, we have marketing levies for things like citrus or bananas or eggs, avocados, lots of different things. But traditionally, the potato industry has not wanted to have a new levy, which they would call a marketing levy. It does have a significant levy, and it's all spent on R&D, so on different pest diseases, all sorts of different, you know, research and development, but not marketing. And I think that there's an opportunity there for us to re-educate people around the health benefits, because I don't think that if we're allowing people to make up their own stories and figure it out themselves, then they're only going to get what social media or what people are going to give them. I think, you know, farmers really need to tell their story. They need to, you know, we can't have that confusion. So, and I think lots of other industries have actually done it really, really well. I can remember when avocados weren't very good for us. They were a bad fat, and we couldn't have very much of them. I remember when eggs were terrible for us and we could only eat one a week, you know, and now 20 years later, we've realised that those things are very, very healthy for us, and the concept and the mindset around whether we can eat them and how much we can eat them has changed, extremely changed. So I think it's really naive not to have a marketing campaign about how healthy potatoes are and how we can eat them and how they are so versatile and how they are so cheap and how they are so sustainable for our environment. And all the really great things that we're not really hearing, and I think it's super important.
Okay, thank you. And Claire, you can probably guess where I'm going. Sorry about that. We're getting some feedback. Sub-Saharan Africa, India, health agenda versus hunger, all those on your Nuffield?
Yeah, no, it's something that came up nearly everywhere I went to. The health benefits are really, like the potential of the health benefits of potatoes in Kenya and India were huge. And I went to the potato conclave, the global potato conclave, and that was in India, and they were talking about, how do we get these messages across? I think as Karri-Anne said, it's really about telling the story. It didn't seem to be that it needed to be, although in India they did say, they were championing that they could get government to actually almost make eating potatoes compulsory, which I can't imagine that we could go to the UK government and say that everybody needs to eat potatoes, I think, for breakfast was what they were suggesting. But yeah, no, everywhere, we all know how good potatoes are, and we've got to shout louder about it, and that kind of joined up global picture of it as well, that we can support these countries in saying that potatoes are good for you, and get some of those, I love what Karri-Anne's talking about, is actually looking at these benefits and doing it, about the nutritional benefits and pushing that as hard as possible. In America, they had a really interesting campaign about potatoes for as nutrition for taking part in sports. In premium sports, so there's some really exciting stuff. I don't think it necessarily depicted being part of a governmental approach. I think it's often about the industry pushing it as much as possible.
Okay, and Sandy, so business level, BPTA level, Europatat level, lots of interactions, and I'm just wondering where that kind of health message sits in all of those relative to the trading issues that are going on.
I think the health message is key, Rob. I think what's perhaps more key is the marketing message in general. Potatoes aren't on the marketing agenda of any of the major multiples enough. We aren't talking about them enough. I think 5 a day is the buzz, and has been for the past 15, 20 years. And if there's any possible way of having UK potatoes included in that, it should be. And I slightly disagree with Claire, very tongue-in-cheek. I think the UK government should make it compulsory to eat potatoes for breakfast and lunch. But I do, of course, have to say that our favourite way to eat potatoes in the UK is probably as chips wrapped up in newspaper. So that is maybe our number one stumbling block. But for sure, if we let the popular press and social media dictate the health benefits of potatoes, we've already lost. So we need to be pushing forward with it. Don't necessarily have the answer as to how, but I'm sure others out there do.
Okay, brilliant, Sandy. Thank you. Right, I've got a raft of Brexit questions here, and just in the interest of time, I'm going to attempt to thread some of them together. So Sandy, I think most of them are coming your way here, but part one is Andrew Ski. What are you expecting in terms of reciprocal recognition of national lists? So that's one. Then we've got a question from James Ringe, and this is for you, Sandy, but also for Claire. What is it you want to see as a deal for UK PLC? One with tariffs or one without? Okay, so if we do the reciprocal recognition first of all, Sandy.
Yeah, Andrew, it's a very, very good question. I'm obviously coming from a breeding background here as well. So ideally, yes, I would like to see reciprocal recognition. It makes the stack of paperwork that little bit less high on my desk in terms of registering new varieties and the cost implications of that. To be perfectly frank, though, I don't know is the answer. There's an awful lot more involved in this than simply what Sandy McGowan and Cygnet Pep want. There's the BSPB, etc., etc., etc. So yes, I would like to see it included, but Andrew, I think unfortunately I don't have a clue how to answer that at this moment in time until I see what any sort of deal or no deal looks like. In terms of James's question, I'll be very frank about that as well. James, I'm a seed producer based in Scotland. I would like to see tariffs on imports and no tariffs on exports, but of course that's very much the the rose-tinted spectacles looking at it. But if we can, in any possible way, protect and promote the Scottish and the UK seed industry, then that's what I would like to see. But I realise that's not a realistic position.
Okay, Claire, have you got a wish list when it comes to tariffs?
I think I'd maybe divert that to Patrick Hughes, who's the specialist for us on Brexit and export. But yeah, I think it's really just from my point of view, it's bang the drum of how good quality we have and make sure that, you know, they want our produce no matter what, and really need to be proud of what we do, because it really is outstanding. So one way or the other, we need to make sure we can access those markets.
Okay, brilliant. So this is all about banging the drum, and I think to close off this session, then Karri-Anne, I'm coming back to you with a question, which is a question of my own, really. But I visited Australia 4 or 5 years ago with Ozveg for one of their conventions. The talk at the time was all around a duopoly in retail and having really limited competition at that retail level, and I have to say the room was split on whether that was a good thing for making life easy or a bad thing in terms of reducing competition. But I'm just wondering if you can share some of your experiences of how that retail conversation takes place. Context here is we have 6 or 7 choices rather than 2.
So my opinion on that is it does reduce competition because there's only 2, the duopoly. But I think what it really does is it limits growers' innovation, because I really noticed when I travelled abroad that the diversity of the value-added potato products, because you could producers could actually, and suppliers could actually get them in lots of different outlets, and let the customers actually be the judge of what they like and what they don't. Because we only have the duopoly and we have only really 2 outlets, and Aldi is getting a little stronger now in Australia as well. But as suppliers, we can't test the market for new products as easily as you see it being done in Europe, even New Zealand, and places like that, because we're very limited, and we have to get a particular product past a buyer before we can get it on the shelf to test to see whether customers really like it or not. So yeah, we don't really have a lot of innovative products in Australia because it's really hard to get them to market. So I think that's probably the worst thing about our duopoly. Yeah, it's that's the thing I've really noticed, because we just don't have access to all those exciting products that you see overseas.
Okay, right. Well, thank you everybody for your contributions in this session. That's been excellent. I am conscious there are 1 or 2 questions here that we haven't addressed, specifics around Northern Ireland access from the 1st of January, but we'll take those offline and see what we can investigate and get back to individuals. I'll call a break at this point then, just so we can do what it is we need to do. So thank you, Sandy, Karri-Anne and Claire. That's been absolutely fantastic. We're going to take a 10-minute break now, and then we'll come back. We've got a marketing session and then a lunchtime awards ceremony before we break for a longer lunch. So can I ask then that if you're back in your seat for 10 past, that gives us enough time to catch up on things as the agenda unfolds. All right, so we'll see you all in 10 minutes. Thank you ever so much.